And I believe you can now see my deck, which says the asymmetric threat of AI cybercrime. You can give me a comment. Okay, so we'll go ahead and get started here. I will try and pay attention to comments as they come along. But today I wanted to give you a view of where agentic pen testing is going, both on the adversarial side and necessarily on the defensive side. Welcome to this webinar hosted by ThreatMate. My name is Luke Ghosh. I'm co-founder and CEO of ThreatMate. And what we're doing here today is giving you a preview of our agentic pen testing approach that we'll be releasing. Appreciate everyone taking the time out of their schedules to join us for this. So super important. This space is rapidly evolving, especially on the offensive side. We're going to talk some about the threat actors and their capabilities, and then what we're doing on the defensive side that gives you the capability to respond in kind to these kinds of attacks. I wanted to start with a real life example, Claude ransomware campaign that Anthropic published. This is on the web. You can find it. The key takeaway is this attacker, which hit 17 different kinds of organizations focused around healthcare, government, and religious institutions, used AI to upskill, automate, and scale their attack, their ransomware attack against these organizations. As Anthropic disclosed, they did use Claude AI to actually execute this attack and had a real impact against these organizations. And this is kind of the proverbial shot over the bow that we all need to pay attention to. Now we're seeing these kinds of AI-driven attacks with higher frequency. You're continuing to see that both in news articles and LinkedIn. So how does it work? Well, largely they're automating the kill chain, which means they can do better in each one of these stages using AI, but more importantly, they can operate faster. So in the case of this particular attack, started out with reconnaissance, finding susceptible organizations to actually compromise, doing vulnerability scanning of those organizations, harvesting credentials for account takeover, moving laterally on the network from one device to another, given the attack surface, and then data exfiltration. But another interesting thing is you don't have to have a fixed ransomware amount. You can actually base your ransom based on who you're actually going after and what their financial capabilities are. So they can steal things like bank account information, know how much money is in the bank to actually extort them, right? So I think this is pretty interesting, moving away from script kiddie tactics of pre-scripted attacks and pre-scripted ransoms to how can we work with you to get your key back in order to decrypt these files with services, payment for services, right? So that's sort of they're presenting it as a business value proposition when in fact they're extorting you. So now we're officially in the vibe coding era. I'm sure many of you are vibe coding yourselves and having fun with it. But here's the reality: if you're vibe coding, so are the adversaries, right? And they've got a lot of money behind them because they're driving a lot of revenue through these kinds of attacks. Here, an AI orchestrates both the tactical and strategic decisions on the fly. Again, it's not scripted. They're able to figure out not only how much should I ransom, but what attacks do I launch given this organization's attack surface. is the barriers to entry have collapsed. It's no longer the domain of elite hackers or hacker teams, right? You can have solopreneurs, if you will, on the adversarial side. What does this all mean? It puts SMBs directly in the crosshairs of attacks. This is not an enterprise-only problem. This is a problem for the clients that you guys manage today. And your clients are counting on you to stay ahead of these threats. So let's talk about what legacy defenses are and where AI-enabled adversaries currently are. So the tools that you're using today in the stack, this is obviously not your fault. It's just what's out there right now, right? It's based on an era where the attackers were humans, right? And they had known exploits and certainly even back to the malware area, known malware signatures that you would detect, either triggering on hashes of malware or static behavior patterns, right, and established TTPs. Now, with AI-enabled adversaries, the pattern is dynamic, right? It changes on the fly. It's doing context-based deep research. I'm sure you're using Perplexity for deep research. Well, they're using deep research on attack surfaces. What is my next move given this attack surface? And then they can modify and adapt in real time. So let's talk about machine speed execution. This is a really big deal. We just published a blog on machine speed execution given AI. Check it out if you haven't. So typically what once took, a hacker or a crime gang weeks to do reconnaissance, understand the adversary, do phishing campaigns, understand the attack surface, now happens within hours, right? So this time scale is rapidly accelerating. You may have seen the recent published research on time to exploitation from a vulnerability that went from months to hours. This was just published at the Unprompted conference in San Francisco last week. What this really means is I can do automated execution replicated across dozens or hundreds of targets simultaneously. The attacker that Anthropic disclosed was 17 organizations, but why limit yourself to 17 when you can scale with this approach? From a legacy tooling perspective, you can get overwhelmed by speed and scale. So if you're the target as an MSP and you've got 80 clients, they could rapidly scale for your 80 tenants, right? So that's what we're up against. Great. So that sounds pretty depressing, right? The adversaries are leveraging AI. They're getting smarter as a result. They don't have to be nation state class because the AI is doing it for them. Well, how do we deal with this? I hate to tell you, the answer is AI. You have to defend with AI against offensive AI. Just like attackers are able to innovate with AI, well, defenders have to do the same. If you're not automating your defense with AI, your defenses will get blown past by these guys. And I'll give you, I know this is, it's not even PowerPoint. I built this deck with AI, but I'll show you an example, a demo of how this actually works. Let me pause through here. I know I'm going through this pretty quickly, but are there any questions so far? Good. Let's see if not in the actual interface for Teams to actually see if there are questions, but let me keep moving forward. So, I think I just heard something. Let's talk about how we can mirror our defenses against their offense. Well, the defense actually starts with thinking adversarial. you want to be able to simulate adaptive multi-stage attacks used by actual adversaries. And I'll show you how this works. And this will reveal exactly how an AI-enabled adversary would move through your client's networks. Pretty importantly, it'll also provide you proof on where your defenses hold up and where they fail, which is super important. You want to be able to simulate what these adversaries are going to do, and then figure out, are my defenses going to actually withstand these kinds of attacks? Really importantly, once you understand how an adversary will move through your network using AI, you want to be able to break those kill chains that the adversary uses. And it actually is a super efficient way of being able to defend a network, which is break the kill chain. If you guys are familiar with the Lockheed Martin kill chain, you know what I'm talking about. If not, I will show you that in the demo. So a really important concept to grasp is compound risk intelligence. So if you think about how defenses work today, they are necessarily siloed, right? You've got CrowdStrike or SentinelOne on your endpoint, or ThreatLocker as an example. You've got Microsoft security score for your M365 security. Huntress for your Huntress or Petra for your ITDR on Microsoft 365. You've got a dark web scanner, maybe ID agent. You got a vulnerability scanner for behind the firewall. All of these are different attack surfaces, right? And you've got different tooling for these different attack surfaces, each one of which you're trying to manage those risk signals, right? The challenge, of course, is adversaries aren't constrained to those silos. They do all the research, they ask an AI to figure out the attack paths, and it just does it, right? So compound risk intelligence means looking at every different attack surface, understanding the risk signals, and pulling that all together into attack chains. And so this is proof, not theory, right? So we're able to, in a single pane of glass, show you what is your risk on these different attack surfaces and how they can be chained together to actually get to the goods, which we call the crown jewels. So how does this work? Well, first detect your risk signals. So looking at dark web analysis, what accounts are compromised on the dark web, what documents may have been compromised, where did the adversary, what services did the adversary gain access to, even cloud services based on, info stealers that may have been deployed. And then what are the crown jewels on your network? So we just released our beta for crown jewel discovery, which is finding that sensitive information on your networks. Given the compound risk signals, you now find the attack chains. How do I put this information together and then use Agentic Pentest to actually stage these attacks? And then finally, breaking these attack chains. Once you understand how an adversary gets onto a network, well, guess what? You take all those attack chains and you intelligently remediate to break those attack chains. That's how you get ahead of the adversary. So that's sort of the formal end of the deck. And what I'll do is move to a demo. So let's go ahead and do that. Before I pull up the demos, let's take a break here to field any questions. I also wanted to point out that we've got some free tooling out there for you. You can go to any of these tools. They're free tools, scanner.threatmate.com. You can do an OWASP website audit at owasp.threatmate.com. If you don't know what OWASP is, check it out. We'll tell you all about OWASP. And we just released, literally hot off the presses, our dark web scanner, where you can put in a domain, any of your clients, put yourself in, and see what you can discover on the dark web about yourself. When I say yourself, I actually mean your company. So let me go back to Teams and see if there's any comment. I have to find it. Chat. There we go. Okay. Will this deck or recording be available later? Yeah, it'll be available. All of the stuff is recorded. No other questions? I'm actually surprised. So I'm going to pause, and then I'll go ahead and start to bring up the demo. Start here. Here we are. Okay, so I assume that you can all see our Nexus Agentic Pentesting tool. So let me just kind of walk you through what you're looking at. And again, this is a demo network. What we have here in the center is a network that should resemble networks you're familiar with. You've got different segments that are on switch networks. You know, each node is labeled. These are devices, and you have the bad guy, the attacker, outside the core router. Okay. Across the top is the kill chain that Lockheed Martin published back in the early 2000s. Still applies. These are stages of attacks from recon to exploit, actions on objectives. C2 is command and control. And what you have here is an agent. We call him Joshua, and he's asking, shall I play a game? To start with, you want to select an adversary. So we've built out adversarial profiles for that target both MSPs and their sectors that they manage. So as an example, PIN 7, also known as Carbonac, is financial crime, Eastern European financial crime. They do target retail, hospitality, financial, restaurants. And for each of these villains, as I call them, we've got these cards on the right that speak to their TTPs and the specific named TTP within the MITRE attack framework. Okay, so this is Storm 0501. We also have Black Basta, Lockbit, Cozy Bear, and each one of these, you know, so ransomware as a service, Lockbit, I'm sure many of you know them. You can then select the adversary. Yeah. Stuck in while I go ahead and deploy the adversary. So what happens is now we'll simulate a Lockbit adversary into the agent. And these are, so it now, the agent now has taken on the profile of Lockbit. It's now enumerating the network, understanding what's here, and now you can deploy the various tools and proceed. I like to put it in full self-drive mode, which means it's now going to drive itself. And it'll go through and begin to map the network. First starts with recon, discover the targets, and then it'll begin to weaponize its attack vectors, launching against this target. And as this moves forward, it will fully launch its attacks against the network, and it'll publish what it's able to actually compromise on the network. So this is agentic pen testing, and it's going to go through every stage here, following the profile of this particular adversary. Each different adversary has its own tools and tactics. This particular network has a set of vulnerabilities that were seeded. You can see at this point it's already discovered some targets. It's now installing its packages on these targets, and then we'll communicate with its command and control. And we actually have this set up online. If you go to nexus.threatmate.com, we actually made it more of a fun gaming simulation where you can play the white hat, and choose which devices you want to actually defend against, apply patches, try to break attack chains, or you can choose a black hat and choose to be, the bad guy in that situation, launching the attack. So at this point, it's completed its kill chain. It looks like it's compromised a number of targets, and we can go to findings over here. And so you can see it successfully compromised these 5 different devices. Tested 10 hosts, exploited 6 exploits ran, 3 flags were captured. Okay, so that's what the agentic side looks like. As I move to the next demo, which shows you sort of the compound risk intelligence, I will pause and see if there's any questions here. All right, I see some chat. Okay, what kind of safety guardrails do you guys have in place to make it so a swarm of LLMs hacking all of our networks at once doesn't flood my board with security alerts? Great question. So we do build in safety guardrails. We can specify, for example, this is an OT network or an IT network. You definitely don't want to mess around with OT devices. You can put guardrails in place on what it can actually do and what it cannot do. In terms of dealing with security alerts, the idea here with Agentic is that it actually handles the security events for you, right? And I'll show you that in the next demo, but I totally understand the concern there. Is the biggest challenge, of course, with all of these different tools is that you get endless alerts. Will we be able to try this product on a client prior to purchasing? Yeah, of course, we have trial periods. We've only got 5 minutes left. I'm now going to switch to the other demo. Okay. And again, this is all early preview that you're getting. So orchestration agent that does a compound risk intelligence. And again, I'm going to run through this quickly, but here again, you're going to talk to the agent. You'll ask it to assess this domain over here, and it'll now work up a plan to do a full end-to-end assessment of this. And the plan includes dark web reconnaissance, a phishing campaign, an external scan, analysis of M365, a network vulnerability scan behind the firewall to see what the attack surface looks like, and then the agentic pen test, which you've seen a demo of that, auto remediation, and then a rescan. And so now it's asking for explicit authorization. Authorization confirmed. And with that, it will begin to kick off its various scans, and it could do some of these in parallel. So it kicked off a dark web analysis of this domain. And again, this tooling is out there free on the web, darkwebscanner.threatmate.com. So it completed that. It's also kicked off a phishing campaign. I'll show you the dashboard for the dark web. It found 23 credentials, 8 of which are still active. 11, so these are compromised credentials, compromised documents as well. And it also discovered 3 stealer infections, which is very common, by the way. It also did the external scan. Again, these are all capabilities that you see today with ThreatMate. And here you found exposed RDP port, SSL credentials that are expiring essentially. So these are findings from the external scan. M365, if you used their tool before, here it actually shows you which accounts are not protected with MFA, which again, you can now correlate back to things like compromised credentials on the web. Also, which third-party apps have perhaps too much permission granted to them in M365. Let's look behind the firewall. These were the devices we showed you before, and their attack surface, critical vulnerabilities here, and then the exploits that map to those vulnerabilities as well. And over here is the Agentic Pentest. We ran through this, what that looks like before. So here, the AI agent will run through double time through its various exploits to see what it can actually compromise on the network. And while this is running, I'll go ahead and see if there's any other questions, beginning to figure this out. No other questions yet. Okay. I think a half hour is just perfect timing. It's enough for you to not take up too much time of your day with lunch hour and get a quick preview of capabilities that are emerging on the defensive side. Now, these capabilities currently exist on the offensive side, so it really is about being able to simulate adversaries to know what to actually do on the defensive side. So here we're almost done, where it'll find all the attack paths, and it found them. So here are the verified attack paths to the crown jewels. And so the next step is to run the auto remediation step. And this is key. This is a huge unlock, is once you know the attack paths, you can actually intelligently patch devices to actually break the attack chain. So here you're seeing it's identified 4 different devices that when patched actually break the attack chain to the crown jewels. And that's huge. So now once you patch those, you can rerun the scan, and it'll go ahead and rerun these scans to see can it still get to those devices given the attack surface that is now patched in very specific areas. And you can see here, after it completed the rescan, the attack chains were blocked, the crown jewels were protected, 4 different chains were blocked, 0 data was exfiltrated. So now I'm going to go back to my orchestration agent, say the scans, all scans were completed. Generate master report. It's going to go ahead and redo the defender mode. I wasn't convinced that we ran that all the way. Let me see if there are any questions while it's done with that. Okay. Yeah, it's complete. Great. Well, it seems to be stuck on the remediation, so apologize for that, but it is an LLM, right? So it's trying to figure out what's done, what's not done. But essentially what we're now able to do is get the attack surfaces from all the different areas, generate attack plans based on what's found, remediate intelligently in order to break those attack paths, and be able to rescan and confirm that in fact these attack paths are